Get my 6. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the most awesome homesteading channel on the internet that has nothing to do with homesteading off the grid. So I have a real treat for you this afternoon. It's not quite evening yet. It's October though, as we know. I'm going to read another story submitted by a viewer, Charlie in England, who's been a viewer on this channel for a long time and has submitted stories, I think, for every one of our True Hauntings series. We've done 4 so far, and we've got the stories rolling into the channel, so we're putting together volume 5. If I'm looking around because I'm hearing something walking around here, and I'm out here alone, potentially. So you make sure to get my 6. I can't tell. I'm sitting at an odd angle on a hill, and I can't tell if what I'm hearing is coming from behind me or in front of me. So if you see me looking over that way, well, you guys got to look this way. So if you've got a story, anything related to the supernatural, paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, aliens, whatever, all things strange and weird, you can send it in like Charlie and so many others have to the channel. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. So this is going to be a special treat for you and me together because I've not read Charlie's story yet. And it's not because I'm in a rush or that I'm being unprofessional. It's just that I've read enough of Charlie's work to know it doesn't need edited. And I know that he's not going to write anything that's inappropriate for this platform. So I'm excited about this. I read the opening part of the email, and I'm not going to waste time telling you what it says and reading it. I'll just read you the whole thing. So let's just go ahead and get to it, huh? It's a story that he calls Footprints in the Snow. Hello, Kevin, he writes. Your inspiration, I might not need these. Your inspirational storyteller reminded me of my own. I felt moved to share my own similar experience. Charlie here in England with what had me wet-eyed after I had finished reading what I had written. I'm happy for you to include what follows in volume 5 and or air on video. Charlie, we're going to do both. And folks, what he was referencing was a story that I read earlier in the month. It's part of October Nights, 31 Tales for the Halloween Season, Part 1, where I wrote about a guy named PJ who inspired me to become a storyteller, which would lead to me becoming a writer. And about, you know, how if I'd never met that man, if I'd never sat in his cabin on top of a mountain in my small Appalachian American town where I grew up and listened to him tell stories on so many October nights, I wouldn't be who I am. It's just, I'd be some schmuck with a job somewhere in an office bitching about the economy and taxation, and even though I wouldn't be paying much because I would not be making much, but I wouldn't be pursuing my passion. I wouldn't have had the passion. So Charlie is writing to us about that guy in his life, okay? Footprints in the Snow. At the time, my existence was torture. I did not live from ages 11 to 16. I survived, despite wanting to die every day. Such was my lot as the victim of what John Bradshaw termed soul murder in his life-saving book, Healing the Shame That Binds You. Guilt-shamed as a child, Charlie, I can relate. As if the unrelenting abuse at home was not enough, the merciless bullying at school was there to top it up. Just to make sure I knew my place, my lack of worth, and my loathsomeness. I had no support anywhere, and my non-parents did nothing about my peers at secondary school abusing me. So how did I survive? At the time, 1970 to 1975, like other people I have known since who shared their similar histories, I had my ever-present infinitesimal inner flame, the spirit/soul within me above all the torture and undimmed. And yet, to me, as to others, that never felt enough. Like fellow sufferers, my experience was of feeling like I was adrift at sea, alone, and likely to sink without trace and drown at any instant. The bigger universal picture had other ideas for me, and for those people who shared my experience. This showed in the mechanism of providence. Like them, I had one raft to cling to, and as they did, I often felt that without this, I really had nothing to exist for. It was no coincidence that I loved making up stories from the age of 8. Tree knocks. So it's no coincidence that I love making up stories from the age of 8, nor that teachers at middle school had praised my writing, even to the point of reading out 2 of my stories in front of the entire school. Wow. Through this teacher's feedback and encouragement, I discovered that I had both imagination and flair for the macabre. And I clung to the knowledge that teachers who knew about such things had to be right, and my 2 muse grandmothers who knew too, whereas my father, who derided my writing, knew nothing. So, given that peers were crushing me daily at secondary school, I required a new support of my writing, for my art was my raft. Enter my English teacher. He read out my material, both fiction and nonfiction, every week for 3 years. His glowing praise sustained me. John Smith was also inspirational, a great storyteller. His true life yarns had humor, passion, pathos, and drama, and lit up my English classes in existence 3 times a week. A World War II veteran, he had survived Rommel in North Africa, Italy, D-Day, and beyond. Wow. And he was an accomplished cricket and rugby union player who had played for England to boot. I was as awed at this as by his storytelling and life experience. In short, John Smith was just what my existence needed, and at the right time. Even if I had no value, thanks to him, I knew my writing did. The one story that really stood out was of his wintertime experience in Italy. I imagined the Dolomites, the snow-covered mountains he described, in the January sun. On leave, he was captivated. An enchanting Italian woman, and he felt a deep soul-to-soul connection which transcended mere biological chemistry. He said this was like total adoration, faults and all, both sides. Besotted, he was warm and enveloped in a joining which felt like a childhood crush. So John Smith lived in the moment with the sort of woman he could never have dreamed of. We just had a reply knock up here. And a reply knock there. We're surrounded. Knocking from there, a knock from there, and a knock from there. Now, this knocking over here is too consistent. That sounds like somebody might be using a hammer on something. But even with that being the case, something replied from up there and down there. And that might not be a hammer. The property over there, the people are not there. They are not home. There's no one over there. And it's a considerable distance away. And only a few months out of the year can we even see over there because of the leaves. And we're not there yet. All right, let me get on with this story. We might have to go squatching here real soon. So the teacher is really sharing some wonderful time with this wonderful woman he's met while he's on leave from the war. Maria told John that she wanted to marry him. He replied that he was happy to do so. She said that much as she wanted to, she could not do that to him. She assured him that sooner or later she would have to run away to save him. She cried as she said that she could not help herself and did not want to hurt him. She begged him, though, to stay with her until she must leave. And so, on a moonlit night, a few days later, John heard the door of Maria's chalet open. An icy wind surged through, spearing him in the face. Maria ran, apparently for her life, from the building and from him. As she fled, her dainty human footprints led away from the building and up towards snow-laden conifers. John dressed, grabbed his rifle, and followed the trail of prints. Before he reached the trees, the footprints had changed and were no longer human-shaped. Sets of 4 prints now led across the crisp snow into the tree line. Each comprised a triangular patch, and in front of these 4 ovals, each sharply pointed at the front end. John froze as he recognized the similarity of these tracks to those of an African wolf, which he had seen in the North African desert. His instinct told him to return to the chalet and leave the location in daylight. John locked himself into the chalet, and smothered in blankets and seated near the log fire, he trained his rifle on the door and waited. Around 1 a.m., scratching sounded and the door rattled. A shrill yelp sounded and the scratching and rattling ceased. John unlocked the door. A dead, brown-furred wolf lay on snow, blood pumping out of its torn-out throat and soaking the snow red. A bark sounded. Startled, John jumped up, rifle ready. Another wolf, its muzzle red with blood, crouched as if in supplication to John. For a moment it regarded him with eyes like no wolf he had ever seen in North Africa. Those eyes glowed warm and unthreatening green, the color of Maria's eyes. The animal turned, did not look back, and loped away toward the trees. John Smith sure could tell a story, and thanks in part to him, in 2000, a Native American shaman presented a necklace to me which signified my status, storyteller. John Smith retired early, so I never had the pleasure of his influence for the last 2 years of my time at secondary school, and all because one pupil abused him so much that he had a heart attack. That's sad. The school expelled that pupil, and I could not understand how that arse could have treated a man who deserved such respect that way. Fortunately, John Smith lived on the same street as I did, and our paths did cross, and although his heart gave out for the final time a few years later, I shall never forget a great and inspirational storyteller and a lifesaver. The end. Wow. Charlie, that is one of the most beautiful stories I have ever read, I have ever heard. The story of the man and how he influenced you, and then also the story within the story of how he was obviously in a relationship with a shapeshifter. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful story, Charlie, in England. Thank you so much for sending us this. Folks, please let Charlie know in the comment section how much you enjoyed this story. You are a storyteller and you're an amazing writer. Like I said, I didn't even edit this. And if you noticed, I didn't have to stop because of it. But I don't want to discourage the rest of you who might have a wonderful story, but maybe writing isn't your thing. Maybe you don't do a lot of it. You can send it to us, and me and Erie Lady will clean it up before we read it on air if it needs to be done, and we won't mention that. And if you want to remain anonymous, because you don't want, maybe you are one of those people with a job and you're professional, and you could put your job status in jeopardy if people knew you were talking about ghosts and Bigfoot, Sasquatch and stuff. You can remain anonymous. We'll keep you anonymous. So I hope you enjoyed that story. I hope you come back tomorrow evening for another. We'll see you then from the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire internet that has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid. See you later for more.